In light of some recent and not so recent revelations about the company, should Christians start boycotting Disney? Should we stop going to Disneyland? Should we cancel Disney Plus? What about Star Wars? They got bought by Disney. What should we do about all that? That's what we're talking about today on the To Be the Church podcast.
Welcome to the To Be the Church podcast, where we look at what it means to truly be the church in today's culture. I'm Ben. This is Tyler. This is Andrew. And today we're going to talk about Mickey Mouse.
Ooh.
Disney.
What do we got?
So, I think I put this question on the board. I did have a member of the church come and ask me about this. Obviously, there's been a lot in the news with Disney and things being leaked, kind of what they're doing with their messaging and all that stuff. And this person sent me, I think I put it here on the board, but a post by a well-known female, I guess, opinion person. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of a political commentator.
I guess so, yeah. Yep. We could read this whole thing. I guess it's really long, but it's basically them saying, I'm no longer going to support Disney. Our kids are too important and what they're trying to do to like brainwash our kids. And so we're not going to go to theme parks. You know, many people I've heard, we're canceling Disney Plus. We're not going to buy Disney things. So
Can I read this? Can I read it?
For it?
Yeah, because I think that reading this helped me like kind of be like, oh, that's what they're talking about, rather than just like, oh, Disney has like a character that disagrees with my values.
Yeah, do it to it.
So yeah. All right. So and this person's name is Allie B. Stuckey.
Allie Beth, yeah.
Beth?
Allie Beth Stuckley. Yeah. Stuckley, isn't it?
There's
Stuckey?
no L.
I've always thought it was Stuckley.
All right.
Stucky.
So here we go.
Yep.
I know many of you are huge fans of Disney. The memories you made there growing up and the memories you've made there with your own children are meaningful to you, and for good reason. While my family has never been Disney obsessed, I love Disney World and the movies as a child. There's not much simplicity and wonder in the world today, and Disney was once the go-to place to find them. But God's kingdom is bigger and better than the Magic Kingdom, and we have to do our best to make decisions with this in mind. My responsibility as a parent is to do everything I can to steward my kids' hearts and minds well. I can't in good conscience hand them over to the influence of a corporation so openly trying to disciple them in an anti-God worldview. That would be a dereliction of my duty. There are other forms of fun on earth. It is sad to give this up, but it is not a tragedy. While everyone has to use wisdom, prayer, and biblical thinking to make their own decisions, and while I don't think boycotting every single company that doesn't agree with us is feasible, I think Christians should consider carefully supporting a company that's unabashedly after the minds and souls of our children, publicly standing opposed to all that God says is good and right and true. These are troubling times, but they're also God ordained. We can handle them. Generations of Christians before us and around the world today are facing far worse than skipping out on theme parks. Let's move forward in faith, truth, and courage.
Okay. So, yeah, the issue, anybody kind of up on what was going on there, and that was probably from a few weeks ago, I would guess, that post. You had the pretty public, there was a parental, it was called the Parents' Rights and Education Bill in the state of Florida. And the bill was through the Florida legislature. Governor DeSantis signed it. This is like a couple months ago now. And the bill basically said you can't teach sexual identity stuff and gender type stuff to kids kindergarten to third grade. And so it was like age 8 or whatever and under. And that any type of sex education or that kind of stuff couldn't start in the state of Florida till 4th grade. Passed the legislature, DeSantis signed it. It became law. When it became law, Disney came out that week and said, they made a big statement that they were, and there was a lot of reporting on the internal struggles within Disney, that there was a lot of reporting that the CEO of Disney didn't want to do this because he kind of wanted to dial back the political stuff, but there was a contingent of employees that were really pushing for it. And so Disney as a corporation made a statement that said, hey, we're going to oppose this bill and we're going to, and it's horrible and all those kinds of things. And so Then the state of Florida responded by, eliminating what was called the special district for Disney there at Disney World. Had like its own tax district, and it was like kind of a special treatment thing that had been since the 1960s when they bought that land and built Disney World. So they eliminated that, which actually is going to be a big hit to Disney financially. And since then, Disney has been pretty quiet about all that stuff. And but yeah, so
there were some,
the biggest thing that came
videos,
out, was a guy named Chris Rufo, works for the Manhattan Institute. He got some internal, like an internal Zoom call, basically, from some higher ups at Disney during that period of time, and he leaked that stuff or put it up on his Twitter or whatever. And it was a bunch of executives at Disney, executive level creative people and stuff like that, kind of going off on the whole issue and talking about the agenda that they want to put more sexualized stuff in content for young kids and yada, yada, yada. So I think her thing was right after that had broken, because it was like a huge maelstrom through the news cycle for a week or two. So not just, this character or that character, it was like kind of a big from their internal deals, and some of their high up execs in the creative space that were like, no, this is what we're trying to do. It was kind of admitted there in that deal that got leaked. So that was the response. And then, I feel like in memory, this is probably the 10th time that in my lifetime that I can remember being told to boycott Disney. These things happen all the time. You hear it when a thing would come out, and not just Disney, but any company, and growing up in the Christian world, you'll always hear like, no, boycott Starbucks or boycott this or boycott that, and so, So anyway, and this obviously was beyond just one product being released. This was like internal communications on their exec level, and they were pretty brazen about, what at least the people on that call about what they wanted to do. So it created a big thing. And so that's a pretty strong talking point now that you just read there. And so anyway, that's kind of the background. What's the thought? Are you wondering, Ben, if you need to boycott Disney or?
No, like I said, a member of my church came in with this kind of tweet and said, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And
what do you think?
So some of my initial thoughts were, as you just mentioned, like, this isn't new with Disney. Like, I remember growing up in the 90s, like, Disneyland has a lot of parades as part of kind of their programming. They started having like a gay day in the park and a gay day, Pride Day parade. That was that. And that was like in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And that was a big deal. And so the fact that Disney supports these non-biblical things, a worldview on sexuality and stuff, is not anything new. And so I'm wondering about why about this is it kind of the straw that broke the camel's back for some Christians that seem to be, and I get that there's the brazenness of the agenda and all that sort of thing, but it seems like I know personally, it seems like a lot of Christians who were still big Disney fans, but then the recent stuff was like they're drawing a hard line and we're not going to support that anymore. As if Disney supported a Christian worldview before this and now it's changed, which I just don't think is the case. And then based on what this person said, I think there's a couple of things I would just say are interesting. Like when she says, she talks about handing over our kids to them. And my thought is like allowing your kids, like being discerning with what your kids watch and experience, like that I think is the model, not like, I'm sure there are Christian parents that aren't being intentional with what their kids watch, but like, I don't think that's what any Christian parent should do with any sort of movie or anything, is just hand them over, let them watch it, not be discerning. Like we, with Disney or not, we're always vetting what our kids are watching and making sure that not just based on the rating system, but if we're skeptical at all. I mean, there are movies on Disney Plus that I won't let my kids watch, and even cartoon ones that they've wanted to. And I'm just like, based on what I know of that, we're not going to have you watch it. And that's just kind of the decision. So if she's saying, we shouldn't just hand over our kids to watch stuff without a discernment, totally agree. But like, that's kind of a straw man to me. And like, I'm not doing that. I don't know a lot of Christian parents that are totally oblivious to these things. And then the other thing would be, she says, I know that I don't think boycotting every single company that doesn't agree with us is feasible. Correct. That is not feasible. And what I just kind of find interesting is that people, this podcast is going to get me in trouble probably, but people that I know who are going online to tell everyone that they're now boycotting Disney are doing it usually on an Apple iPhone. Apple has been very, very public with their pro LGBTQ. I guess it's not an agenda because they're not producing content, but like their stance on that.
Sure.
Most of these people are buying tons of products from Amazon. Amazon is very pro LGBTQ and not hiding it at all. And so it's like, well, where's the line here? Like,
Sure.
You're okay with supporting a company that feels this way in this, but with now Disney, you're not. And so to me, it's like, let's at least be consistent. Unless we only want to shop at Hobby Lobby and eat Chick-fil-A, we got to have to wrestle with most companies out there have leaders that don't hold to a Christian worldview. And so to me, that leads me to think it's a conscience issue that families and Christians need to wrestle with, but not shame others who, like most things, I've seen people online with this, like, enough's enough, you know,
Sure.
we're going to cancel Disney Plus, and doing it in this virtue signaling, like, and if you're not, then you're oblivious to what's going on, or you don't care about these things. And I just don't know if that's super helpful.
Why are you so oblivious to what's going on, and why don't you care about these things?
I do care.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
So, Tag Guy, what do you got?
Yeah, I think
You don't feel like a big boycotter to me, Tyler.
No, I'm not. I think that a lot of what Ben said is kind of the same stuff I would have brought up. I think
That makes me feel good.
2. Even if I vote the other way, it's
Ty's
2-1.
way smarter than me.
I think that, you know, and there's definitely ages where this is appropriate, but like I'm a fan as a parent of watching some stuff that we don't agree with. Now, not just indoctrination and stuff like that, but watching some stuff that we can have conversations about.
Yeah.
Right. My daughter is really into basketball. Like my 11-year-old, she loves basketball. And there's a show that her and I have watched together that depicts an inappropriate relationship between an adult coach and a teenage girl. And it's not explicit. It's not like nothing like that. It's very much like hinted at, but it was an opportunity for us to talk like, okay, so if a coach ever does this, like, you talk to us, right?
Yeah.
You know, and it was just like an opportunity. And I wrestled a lot with, like, do I let her continue to watch this show?
Sure.
Whenever I realized where it was going. And again, it wasn't, it was like it was not rated R. It was not explicit, anything like that. And so I'm a fan of stuff like that. Like, hey, why, hey kids, like, why is that counter to our worldview? Right. Mike Cosper's done a lot of really good work on this, like storytelling that promotes the gospel and storytelling that shows the need for the gospel. And, yeah, I don't know. I like that. And so, and again, this is more about the content itself rather than like the agendas behind the content creators.
Sure.
And so I'm speaking more just to the content itself. But yeah, I don't know. I do think what you said, a conscience issue for sure. I'm not here to like say anybody's wrong for deciding that they don't want to support Disney anymore. I'm also
Not at all. I'm not saying that either. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also no one's wrong for deciding, no, I'm going to keep Disney Plus and or keep going to Disneyland or whatever it is.
Sure. You gotta know the age of your kids. You gotta know the stage of your kids. You gotta also know where each kid is at as it relates to the type of stuff you're talking about, Tyler. Like, can they handle this developmentally? Are they, and are these going to be fruitful conversations, or are they going to be out of their depth in handling that specific subject matter or whatever else, right? So you gotta do all those. Same. This falls in. This is 100% a conscience issue. I do not think you could make a definitive argument to say this is what a Christian must do. And I think that the resource we have there, and knowing her work, though apparently I didn't actually know her last name, but knowing Allie Beth's work, she is going to be one that comes out real strong as kind of a movement leader in these kind of things. She's a conservative millennial gal, and she's very.
I've never heard of her. Who is
she?
Wow,
you never heard of her? Yeah. So anyway, she's got a really popular podcast and writing and all sorts of stuff.
Fox
so she's.
News.
Yeah, she's been on lots of things. So, but yeah, so she's her the kind of culture war space and those kind of things is where she's going to be strong in, and she's going to, that's, and I don't even have any problem with her coming out the way she did to her followers, because she definitely makes an impact, and the people following her are going to probably take what she said there and be like, yeah, okay, I'm doing it. I'm not going to Disneyland. And here's the thing about that to understand. I don't think there's anything wrong with that in the space she's in or in the country we're in. One thing that happened with this Disney thing is after that leaked footage that happened there, and after the Florida legislature and the governor of Florida took some pretty hefty shots at Disney from kind of the more conservative side of you could say the culture war, Disney has shut up since then. Like, they have specifically, it's changed their behavior as it relates to that kind of stuff. And it's actually, if you read, I mean, I've read Wall Street Journal articles on this and other kind of publications like that, the kind of the corporations in America, Coca-Cola, Disney, these type of corporations. I mean, we saw it with Major League Baseball. Remember a year or two ago, where there was a law in Georgia, a voting law in Georgia that was signed by the governor, and Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game out of Atlanta in like protest of that. And so what's been going on in recent years in America is a lot of massive corporations have been influenced from kind of the left side of the culture war, whether you want to call it woke or you want to call it whatever, to do the will of kind of one side of the aisle, right? And what's happening now is you're seeing major pushback from the right, and the right is starting to gain some influence like that. And Florida is kind of, Texas is doing a little of this too, but Florida is kind of the leading edge of this, that the governor and the legislature in Florida have started to kind of take the fight, politically speaking, to corporations who want to do the bidding of the left. And it's producing results. Corporations are now starting to go, okay, when a law comes in a certain state or these kind of deals, it's not going to be profitable to us just to take the one side of it, right? Which corporations are corporations. They're looking for profit. So the battle has kind of gotten a little bit more complex in America in that regard. So that's why I think you see, Ben, like you were talking about, what's different from the 90s. I think that's one of the differences, is that now the culture war has kind of heated up more in that sense. And it's like the right is now kind of utilizing government power and those kind of things in ways that historically they haven't, honestly. And there's a lot on the right that don't like that, because that's not necessarily a constitutional conservative way to go about things like this. Normally you want to limit more government from the right rather than use more government power. So it's an interesting moment we're in, right? And I think, yeah, certainly a conscience issue. And I think one other difference too, obviously the gay parade, those kind of things, they'll have a character. Remember when they made all the like real versions of all the cartoons, and they made the one with Beauty and the Beast, and the dude that was like Gaston's buddy was like kind of like a gay guy or whatever. And that was like a big controversy at the time. And you always hear about them, right? I think what was so different about this was the fact that you had those content creators and those lead executives that were like kind of saying what was suspected for a while, that like, no, we are pushing this, and so that made big headway. But on a personal level, again, matter of conscience. It was funny because we actually just came back from Disneyland, and yeah, I know, and we gave everybody in their corporation $1 million so that they can continue to do what they want to do. No, we didn't. But yeah, that was a trip that was on the books for the last couple of years, and it got canceled via COVID, and so we had already paid for it. So we went to Disney. And
so
then
that justifies it.
That justifies it, yeah, because it was already sunk cost. But we actually did delete Disney Plus probably a month or two ago. Might have been even before some of this stuff broke out, just because of the content we were seeing on the different deals. We're like, nah, there's a lot of streaming services, and there's a lot of, I mean, we tend to like the streaming services that we like have a show that we want to watch. We'll like go into that one and then cancel another one. And, there's like, you could pay for like tons of different streaming services right now. So Disney Plus was one that we're like, nah, we won't pay for that now. There's nothing on there we want. And frankly, some of the stuff, one of the ones, Muppet Babies. I think this was when we first were going to cancel it. Muppet Babies, which is like this seemingly super benign show. Gonzo, Gonzo, he like turned into a girl on one of the shows, and we're like, what is happening? Yeah, he was like, I'm Gonzo, and then he's like, I'm a girl, and he like transforms into a girl, and we're like, delete, So I think you gotta.
But all the other streaming platforms have that sort of stuff too. Right?
Well, depending on what they carry, So it's what. I guess there's probably not another streaming platform that we have that our kids that like would watch the kids stuff, like our kids aren't like on Hulu Kids or something like that. So that was kind of the streaming platform we had that was more for kids content. And what we do for kids content, we kind of pick and choose and have, we have a ton of old DVDs and that kind of stuff. So that was the one that we had that was probably more kids related. But yeah, seemingly if our kids were in another streaming platform, which they're not. There's nothing that they have. Even Disney Plus, we would monitor what they were going to watch.
What I appreciate is that most have parental controls. Even Disney Plus, you can make it where they can't access anything that's like, they take off a lot, even all the cartoon stuff, if you put on the restricted mode or whatever. But to me, it comes back to the matter of conscience. And I guess it's not even, what bothers me as we talk about to be the church is like, contra Romans 14, we turn these matters of conscience into reason to cast judgment on each other.
Sure.
And I don't think that's the Christian way. Like, virtue signaling, shaming others for having a different perspective on that. I just don't think that's something that unifies the church. So, but by all means, if someone in their conscience feels like they should boycott, great. I support you as a brother or sister in Christ.
Have at it.
Someone else who doesn't, it's not a sin issue necessarily.
Yeah. Dude, one other thing that I was realizing too after I was saying reasons why we canceled Disney Plus, I remember my wife had told me it wasn't specifically the negative content, but some of the kind of old school content, like old Robin Hood or those old classic Disney movies, they were starting to take them down because they had images in them or cultural things in them that weren't in line with Disney's new values or whatever. So she's like, if we're not going to get the shows we wanted there and the new stuff is kind of lame, let's just cancel it. So,
Yeah. Well, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out. podcast@tobeTheChurch.com is the best place to get a hold of us. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also just leave a question right there in the comments. We'll check that out. And until next Friday, keep being the church.